You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Michael Goodwin. Michael, on this obviously 1-year anniversary of October 7th, you wrote a really powerful column. Israel stands alone in its fight against terror. We were just reporting, by the way, I don't know if you heard at the top of the show, there are reports about this underground earthquake that may have been a nuclear test by Iran over the weekend. The stakes are really high, Michael.
Indeed, they are. And the real tragedy here is that Israel does stand alone. This is a historic moment. And for the Biden administration to be weak in the knee about this, for Kamala Harris to be blithering about, Israel's right to defend itself and not answering a question about Netanyahu, for France to be declaring an arms embargo against Israel as though they attacked on October 7th, 2023, and not the other way around. That, to me, is the most chilling part of that, along with the anti-Semitism, the support for Hamas, Hezbollah in New York, in other cities in the United States, in Europe. I mean, it's Israel really does stand alone, unfortunately, and I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to change in the near term.
Judge Weinberg.
Michael, what concerns me? They're standing alone. They're fighting a fight that has to be fought to protect Western civilization. It's not their fight alone. Israel is just the first victim in this ongoing struggle to have Sharia law imposed worldwide, in Europe and ultimately in America. But then you have these kids in the street who don't understand history or government or have a moral conscience. Where is the outrage at the UN and in the streets and the campuses, Michael, against the Chinese abuse of the Uyghurs? What about what Russia's been doing in the Ukraine? What about what happens in Africa? Everybody's going after Israel as they're some sort of victimizer when they're the victim. What do you say?
No, I completely agree with you, Judge. When you look at what the UN does, for example, with Israel compared to all the dictators in China and Africa and throughout the world, the Mideast, many of them, no rights, no democracy, nothing for women. And yet Israel, which is in many ways the most progressive country in the region, gets slammed constantly over human rights. Now, if human rights are for all humans, then why is Israel only singled out? And in fact, there are, I believe, 10 seats in Israel's Knesset, the parliament, held by Arab parties, essentially Arab-leaning parties. And yet we're told that the Arabs are treated as slaves and as second-class citizens in Israel.
They're members of the cabinet and they're justices of the Supreme Court of Israel.
That's right. That's right. So if there's any country in the region that is favoring equal rights, it would be Israel. But it's the one that's held up as always the bad guy. And look, I do think that what we're witnessing here with Iran, as you said, Israel is the little Satan. We're the great Satan. Iran gave those names. So that's why I say that Israel's enemies are America's enemies. They are Europe's enemies. And for America, the White House, for Macron and others in Europe to pretend otherwise is really inviting the aggression. You would have thought that World War II and appeasement would have taught them something. But here we go again.
Ed Cox.
Michael Goodwin, would this have happened, Israel being attacked from four sides, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and Houthis, if in fact Biden had continued the maximum pressure policies of the Trump administration?
Well, that's a very good question, Ed. And I think that while we can't imagine how the mullahs would have interpreted that, The fact is they would have had a heck of a lot less money. And so whatever their malign intentions, they wouldn't have been able to afford the financing that they have poured into these groups. I mean, the Houthis have essentially, they are now all but the governing group in Yemen. We know what Hezbollah has done to Lebanon. These things don't come cheap. I mean, these are very expensive operations. They're terror proxies. They're burrowing. I mean, Hamas certainly was benefiting from money from Qatar and others. So there is a dollar connection, a financial connection to all of this terrorism. And the United States openly lifted the sanctions, enabling Iran to sell its oil, from which it reaped hundreds of billions of dollars. It bought hostages from Iran. It unfroze money that the sanctions had frozen just this week. They unfroze, I think, $6 billion and said, "Oh, there are restrictions on how that money can be used." Oh, really?
Yeah, it's disgusting.
And who enforces those restrictions, Michael?
Exactly, nobody. And
right.
Even John Kerry, when he was asked about these years ago, said, "Well, a certain amount we know does go to their proxy groups."
Yeah, by the way, they were waffling the other day, Michael, on whether or not to even start sanctions. I mean, I want to also, Michael, this just kind of came in. It's interesting. It's CBS morning show. They had a pro-Palestinian speaker, guest on. And apparently the host was kind of grilling him. And now it's causing a lot of debate within CBS saying, it wasn't truthful that he was grilling this pro-Palestinian speaker. Some of the bosses saying it was appropriate. Is this sort of, do you see this sort of now kind of coming out, sort of this, venting of the truth coming out that maybe the bosses are going, well, no, it was appropriate. Apparently it's creating division within the news network on what's the truth on this. I'm sorry. You go in and you slaughter 1,200 people on October 7th. I think that's the truth.
Yeah, look, I think this is happening in a lot of newsrooms. I think some of it's generational. I mean, the executive editor of the New York Times, Joseph Kahn, has talked about this in terms of, the transgender issues, the racial issues, just work habits, people demanding to work from home, demanding to get raises after 6 months and promotions. It's very generational. And I think all of this leftist stuff is largely generational. It's these people who are a few years out of college where they reveled in cancel culture. They never had to hear anything they didn't agree with. If they did, they broke into tears. And now they come into the office and they're not professionals. They're not trained properly because they refuse it. They want these jobs in order to express their opinion, to carry out their activities and activism on the job. And I think so you're seeing this in a lot of places, and I'm not surprised that CBS has been hit by the bug too.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael Goodwin, thank you very much. Such an important topic on this day, on this anniversary. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you all.
Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts for the power, performance, and reliability of a new Superstart battery. Visit O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly